Hello and welcome to this very first edition of our Back to School event, created for and by educators, IT admins and school leaders to help you transform the learning experience with Apple technology. I'm Rhiannon Owen-Jones, Field Marketing Manager here at Jamf. We're delighted to have you here with us today. Over the course of the event, you'll have access to different areas. The first being the live spotlight sessions every afternoon from 3:30 BST, a pool of useful resources from Jamf and our solution partners, including tutorials, case studies, ebooks, and much more. There'll also be a networking area where you can meet and speak with other attendees. And lastly, you'll have a replay section where you'll be able to find the replays from the previous days. You can easily navigate between these different sections from the homepage. You'll also see on the right-hand side the event chat, and when you attend one of the live spotlight sessions, you'll also have the opportunity to ask questions within the question section throughout the session. We'll be kicking off today's live sessions with a Jamf-led presentation entitled Empowering Student Success Starts with Empowering the Teacher. Also get some previews of our new training program, Jamf Educator. We'll then hand over to Andrew Jewell for a presentation around inspiring teachers. Next up, we'll welcome Abdul Chauhan, who will share how Shobi helps empower educators. And lastly, we'll close off today's live sessions with a fireside chat between Arab Webb and Matt Pullen.
All right, Ree, thank you for that rundown of the day. I'm so excited we get to kick off this afternoon with you at this back to school event. Sarah and I are very excited to join you from the US to talk to you a little bit about Jamf Educator. This is a great learning opportunity and platform for you to grow in your use of Jamf tools, and more specifically, that Jamf Teacher app. So with that, we're going to start with introducing ourselves. I'm Dr. Emily Froese, former public school educator and administrator here in the great state of Texas. Howdy, y'all. Just for you who love the Texas draw, I can say it sometimes. But like I said, former public school educator, Sarah and I both know the strain and the stress. While we haven't lived the COVID world in your shoes, we were very much in tune with that public school space. So we are encouraged by this learning platform that we've created for you today. We didn't create it today. It's been in creation for a while, and it launched a couple weeks ago, but we're excited to share with you today the inner workings of this platform. But I'm gonna let Sarah introduce herself and then we'll get started.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to this fantastic event. My name is Sarah Olson, and I have just the most respect for educators and those who support teaching and learning and students. And we're so grateful to be able to share this wonderful new platform with you all today. I worked in public education for over 10 years, and I am coming to you from the sometimes very cold state of Wisconsin in the United States. And yeah, let's jump in and start talking about how fantastic Jamf Educator is.
Awesome. So in effort to build awareness around the Jamf Teacher tool, we took some time to really look at how to integrate this tool into your lesson design, your learning environment, and also pairing it with the amazing Apple devices you have at your fingertips. So our team came up with Jamf Educator. So we think Jamf Teacher plus Jamf Educator is definitely going to put a smile on your face. And while we are talking directly to classroom educators and teachers in that role, there's also an Edtech track. So we wanted to be inclusive of not only the classroom teacher, but those who might be training and working with educators outside of the classroom.
Great. So what is Jamf Educator? So Jamf Educator is a custom-built platform for teachers to either go through and learn about the Jamf Teacher app on their own, or it can be done as a whole school professional development activity. The Jamf Teacher app, we're going to go over the many excellent features that the app has to offer for those of us who are teaching children and those of us who sometimes struggle with things like classroom management or differentiation, or if you're great at it, just a couple ideas of how to improve your practice.
So, who can be a Jamf educator? Anybody. As we mentioned before, there's 2 tracks for the classroom educator and the tech Edtech persona. And like Sarah alluded to, it's a self-paced or it can be done in a half-day professional learning. We wanted to give you options to have an ongoing work at your own pace, or if a principal like myself wanted to do a half day to make sure my educators had the same learning experience, you can do that as well. So anyone can learn the Jamf Educator badge. All you need is a Jamf login.
So we are here to support you, and we know that sometimes when you are given technology or apps or tools, it can be overwhelming to not only learn the tool to fluency, but also just to be able to adopt it into your everyday classroom practices in a meaningful way, in a way that challenges students, in a way that helps them to expand their learning. And so we know that alone, sometimes it can seem very challenging, but we are here today to show you that power of being together and being supportive. And so we wanted just to highlight this quote by Helen Keller: "Alone we can do so little, and together we can do so much." So what we're going to do now is show you an overview video of the Jamf Educator platform for you to be able to see how you can use the Jamf Teacher app in your classroom environment, or if you're an EdTech professional, ways to support your teachers using this app in the environment. Enjoy. We are so excited today to introduce you to Jamf Educator, a custom-built platform for teachers and those responsible for educational technology to learn about the Jamf Teacher app. Now, before we dive right in, let's take a step back and think about that while education has changed over the course of time, many challenges in education have actually remained the same. For example, classrooms will continue to be filled with children from a variety of backgrounds, with different learning strengths, different learning needs, different life experiences, and a variety of interests. Students will continue to occasionally not follow directions and, well, be kids with developmentally appropriate behavioral needs. As kids push limits and boundaries, classroom management is a timeless and ever-present challenge to not only novice, but experienced teachers as well. Those 2 examples of those timeless education challenges are what make teachers so incredible. The art of education speaks to the teacher who is willing to try new ways to meet the variety of needs of their students while maintaining an engaging and positive learning environment. Now, let's shift for a moment and think about what has changed in education over the course of time. While a variety of items may come to mind, we are going to focus on technology, specifically Apple and Jamf. Jamf Educator explores the intersection between technology and those ever-present, timeless education challenges, including classroom management, differentiation, feedback, and student interaction. Let's dive in and see how Jamf Educator provides teachers an engaging learning environment, to see how the Jamf Teacher app supports classroom management, differentiation, student interaction, and feedback. You can find Jamf Educator by navigating to educator.jamf.com. On the homepage, you will notice 4 different tiles. The first 2 tiles are 2 different learning tracks dedicated to educators or those who are leading educational technology, Edtechs. It is worth noting that Jamf Educator can be an individual self-paced learning journey or part of a group professional development learning experience. Let's go into the educator track first. Each learning track is broken down into 4 stops. Let's tap on Stop 2, Classroom Management and Jamf, and take a look around. You must tap Register for each stop and log in with your Jamf ID. Don't worry, creating a Jamf ID is free and very easy. Once registered, you will notice that each stop has a station overview. First, an introduction video that outlines what features we will be focusing on in the Jamf Teacher app.
I was feeling quite anxious when Mr. Lim, my teacher, taught us this new skill of self-assessment. Mr. Lim described how we will be using self-assessment throughout the year as part of our learning journey. He shared a rating scale with us from 1 to 4, explaining that each number would correlate with a perceived level of understanding. I was becoming more intrigued. Our job throughout the year would be to reflect on how we felt about our perceived level of understanding or our confidence with the content we were learning. Mr. Lim shared that he would be using this tool to make teaching decisions throughout the year. Like, should he continue teaching us the same concept, or should he move forward? That's pretty cool, Mr. Lim. And then the best thing happened. Mr. Lim told us that we will be using our Jamf student app to share our self-assessment with Mr. Lim. No needing to raise our hands or hold up a number in the air. Thank goodness. All we have to do is type in a number and Mr. Lim will see our data.
Then you will notice 2 sections called See It and Try It. The See It section has a step-by-step video walkthrough of how to use the feature within the Jamf Teacher app itself. The next part, Try It, is fantastic because it provides you with a simulated environment to practice using the app without actually having the app deployed onto your device. Next, you will see an Apply It section, which includes practical classroom application ideas. We like to think of this section as the Use It Tomorrow bank of ideas. Lastly, the Design It section provides you a chance to create your own asset for immediate classroom use. Take a look at the Design It tasks here in Stop 2. After you complete one stop, you will be awarded a certificate for your professional development folder. Once all stops are completed, you can take a short quiz and gain your amazing Jamf Educator badge. Let's go back and now take a look at the learning track for Edtechs. The Edtech track is designed to provide tools and resources to those who are leading professional development on Jamf Educator. The Edtech track is broken down into 4 different stops as well to correspond with the stops in the Educator track. Let's tap on Stop 2, Classroom Management and Jamf. Each stop has 3 different sections: an introduction to provide context around the app and the feature, delivery and facilitation guides, and related materials. Finally, let's take a look at the last 2 tiles found on the Jamf Educator homepage. The Keep Learning stop includes a variety of resources for those looking to further their learning. Resources include materials from both Jamf and Apple. The Integration and Tools tile provides resources for educators to learn how to use other apps on their iPads. Take a look at the resources below. We have covered a lot of material today, so let's cover the highlights of Jamf Educator. Jamf Educator is a program for educators to learn about the Jamf Teacher app and how the different features address educational challenges, including classroom management, differentiation, student interaction, and feedback. There are 2 separate learning tracks, one for educators and one for those responsible for educational technology, the Edtech track. The tracks are broken down into different stops. After an educator completes a stop, they earn a certificate. After the completion of all the stops, educators can take a quiz and earn their very own Jamf Educator badge. Jamf Educator focuses on challenges found in every classroom, regardless of location, age, and content area. We are so grateful you have taken the time today to learn about Jamf Educator. Thank you.
Awesome. Sarah, thank you so much for putting that video together. As a visual learner, I really appreciate you walking me through the videos and screenshots and just kind of letting me know what that experience is going to be. But I have a question. What are a few of the functions that I can use right now in Jamf Teacher in my classroom?
That's a great question, Em. So I want to just kind of tell the story from when I was a teacher. So I used to teach middle school choir, and in the United States, that's ages 11 through 13. It can be kind of a unique, wonky age. I don't know if that's going to track overseas, but middle schoolers are special creatures. So one of the things that I love about Jamf Educator is that sometimes when I would give students iPads, they would not always go into the apps that they were supposed to. And I could have had the most creative lesson, the most engaging lesson, but kids are kids. And so Jamf Teacher allows me to go in to the platform, tap 2 to 3 little buttons, and determine what apps I actually want to be present on my students' iPads so that they're only able to access those apps. And it was also nice in the sense that sometimes iPads can have so many apps, it's overwhelming to know where to go. And this saved a lot of time, and it did limit some off-task behavior. The second thing that I really appreciated about Jamf Teacher is the ability to get everyone's attention. And so there's a functionality within Jamf Teacher called attention. And what that is it allows the teacher to go right into the Jamf Teacher app and press 2 little tiles that essentially lock all the kids' students' iPads for a minute, so that if I'm trying to get the kids' attention and I still have kids that are looking at their devices or not listening, I can stop them from using their iPad. And the attention functionality can also be sent with a message. So I could say, hey, everybody, I just want to remind you, I have 5 minutes left in class. You need to turn this in before the end of the day. And then kids are hearing it, and then they're seeing it. And I know that I have their attention because it's right on their device there. The third thing that I really like about it is the ability to go into Safari or a web browser and determine what websites I would like my students to actually be able to go into. So sometimes we want kids to go to a website and there might be a misspelling in putting in the URL, or sometimes kids might find it more interesting to go to a Pokemon website or a Minecraft or whatever kids are into than the music website I wanted them to go into. So this feature in Jamf Teacher is called Web Block, and it allows you to either block certain types of websites, maybe social media, or it simply allows you to determine what websites your students will go into when they tap on Safari. So those are a few really practical ways to use Jamf Teacher in my classroom today and my classroom tomorrow.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, oh, Sarah, you got something else.
Right. So I guess I want to say to everybody that Jamf Educator is really a platform that was built by teachers who understand what it's like to have students in your classroom every day with those universal challenges that all educators face, whether it's classroom management, device management, just those developmentally appropriate things that as educators you are wonderful at. Sometimes the Jamf Teacher app can just help support some of those challenges in the classroom. And we made this intentionally, knowing that you have a lot on your plate. And so hopefully this allows you to be able to be even more productive and even a more incredible teacher than you already are.
Awesome. Well, that was a super, super bird's eye view of what Jamf Educator can do for you, the classroom educator. Sarah and I both are highly excited about this platform. We highly encourage you to go in and check it out. I know you may still have some questions, and you'll be able to contact us directly with any of those as they come up. But I think with that, we can start taking a couple of the questions. Ree, I don't know if we need to change the screen, but I can answer. One of the questions was, how much does it cost, Sarah?
It is free.
It's free.
We love free. I would love free coffee for life, but that's just not in the cards today. But Jamf Educator is totally free. And so the only thing that you need to do to enter the platform, or it's actually kind of once you click around a little bit, but is create a Jamf ID.
Yep.
And that is really easy as well. Essentially, you'll be putting in an email, and then you'll kind of get an authentication process. And then you have a Jamf ID, and you can go right into Jamf Educator, go through the programs. Maybe you want to start at differentiation to learn a little bit more about how Jamf Teacher can help manage different levels of learning in your classroom in a way that's easier to do by pushing out materials via your iPad. So it is free and totally available right now.
I have another question that just came in. How do I share that I have earned my Jamf Educator badge? How do I do that?
Yeah, so we are encouraging people to share their badge via Twitter or social media. If you are not part of social media, another way to highlight your success and your efforts in this program is to download the badge and put it part of your email signature. And especially if you are finding that golden nugget that really helps to improve your classroom experience, to share that with your colleagues and encourage them to participate as well, because we know that when people are working together in this platform, and you know your own school culture, you are sharing students, you can find commonalities that can help to be truly applicable in your own environment.
Yeah, awesome. All right. Well, that was our last question. So I just want to, again, give a heartfelt thanks for joining us this afternoon. It's not morning. I almost said morning. Time zones. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. We really appreciate it. And we look forward to seeing your name on that Jamf Educator tally board.
Awesome. Have a fantastic event. Bye.
Hi everybody, thank you so much for coming along today. I'm really excited to get invited to be able to talk to you about the subject, which is probably one of my favorite subjects in the whole world, which is the subject of inspiring teachers. I want to do that by focusing on one of the kind of key projects that I'm involved in. So first of all, for any of you that don't know who I am, my name's Andrew Jewell. I have been a teacher for something like 25 years, which feels like far too long a time, but that is actually the truth. And in that time, I taught in a number of different schools in the west of Scotland. And in 2010, the school that I was teaching in did the world's first one-to-one program with an iPad. And for me, that was a really game-changing, transformational moment, because it allowed me to see technology in a way that I'd never really seen it before, if you like, in the classroom. So there was such a dramatic difference between what the iPad allowed me to do in my class and what other different types of technology previous to that had allowed and facilitated. So that was the start of a major journey for me. I now and for the past 6 or so years have worked in various education technology projects in various parts of the world, and more recently at very large scale. We're at a very much a tipping point, really, I think, when it comes to technology and education in the classroom. And that tipping point is, I think, in the next number of months and years, we'll see a situation that we all know is about to come, which is really where every young person will go to school with a piece of technology in their school bag, in the same way that probably you or I had textbooks. They'll have iPads, tablets, laptops, and for me, that really drives what I do now. And I work with a number of large scale projects, looking at how do we focus on making the best possible learning experience for our young people in these kinds of projects. Because I think we all know that technology is a very mixed, it's a mixed blessing. Let's just put it like that. I think it offers amazing potential, but also it is not an entirely risk-free world for young people to live in, and we need to help them to thrive in that world. So I want to focus really on the Scottish Borders project as one that I'm probably most involved with at the moment, and that the name of that project, we've called it the Inspire Learning project in the Scottish Borders. It's one that is very dear to my heart. It's not something that is in some ways is slightly different to any other project that I've worked on before. And what we've done over the past couple of years is we have working with all 59 primary schools in the Borders and 9 secondary schools. That's about 14,000 devices, and that covers about 1,500 teachers. And it is from the last 4 years of primary school right through into 6 years of secondary school. And that includes a full refresh of their AV, so interactive devices in every classroom, the ability to stream content from iPad to the screen at the front of the room via Apple TV. And that is in all of our schools now across the Borders. It's one of the most beautiful regions I've ever worked in Britain. Very rural, full of fantastic young people, really rich history, and many different opportunities to really enhance the learning there. And the project has been amazing, and you can see some of the examples of what's being done there just now with Inspire Learning. And we did a lot of work before we put any devices into anybody's hands to really look at what does the culture look like, what does the aims and the vision of this project look like, and how do we share them in such a way that they become really impactful for young people. And right at the heart of them, of this project, and to be honest, at the heart of any of the projects I've worked in that have to any degree been successful, are the people that you work with. And for us in the Inspire Learning team, that means the teachers and the school leaders that are working to bring learning to life every day for thousands of those young people. And that's absolutely one of the kind of core elements of what we're doing. I want to maybe tell you a little story as to how we've come to kind of like take some of the approaches that we've come to take within Inspire Learning. And many of you that are teachers will hopefully resonate a little bit with this. I was stopped in a petrol station not that long ago by a young person who looked incredibly old to me, but assured me that I had used to be their teacher. And actually, when I kind of got over the shock, I remembered this young guy, and I realized that, yeah, I had actually taught him, even though he looked like he was driving his own car, and he looked like he had his own family and all sorts. And he said, "Oh, do you remember that day that we built the Spitfire?" And I'd basically been teaching a whole series of lessons on World War II. We'd gone and visited this place here in the picture in front of you, which is in Kelvin Grove Art Gallery in Glasgow, where they've put this full-size Spitfire in the gallery. They had to take the roof off the gallery to winch the thing in, and it's a fantastic place to go and see. And we'd been there with the class, and I remember coming back and having a class of about 19 boys and 6 girls at that particular time. And we decided that we were going to build a 1:27 scale model of the Spitfire, and we downloaded the original plans, and we bought wood, and we created a skeleton for it, and then we used chicken wire and paper mache, and ultimately we got builders to come in and to hang this just like the one you see there in our assembly hall. And he was referring to that lesson years later when he stopped me in the petrol station, or that series of lessons. He was like, "That was a moment I'll never forget." And it's something I talk about quite a lot to teachers, because sometimes these moments, we get the chance to create them as teachers. We get the chance to plan and craft and create moments that ultimately become memorable. And it is that process of creating memorable moments that ultimately is something which we call learning, and we help our young people to learn. I'm sure many of you have been to Disneyland before, but if you have, your day probably looks like this. And if you were to rank each element of your day out of 10, you might rank it something like this. So it starts off great. You get a good start. You have a nice breakfast at the hotel with your kids. You maybe give that a 6 out of 10. It maybe kind of has the kind of dips in the day where maybe you're waiting in a queue, or perhaps the food's maybe a little bit more expensive than you think it should be, and it's too hot, or the queues or the lines are too long. But ultimately, it ends with the parade, and that's the bit where your kids have got their princess dresses on, or they're dressed up, and they're watching the parade, and the fireworks are going off, and the sun's setting. And if you were to rate that moment of the day, you'd rate it very highly. And if you maybe got a friend that calls you in a couple of months after you've been to Disneyland on your trip, and he says, "What would you have given it out of 10?" Then the interesting thing is that you would probably rate it more highly then than you would have even at the time that you were there. And the reason for that is kind of that your brain is wired to kind of particularly focus on special elements or moments, some of which are the beginnings of things, and some of which are the endings of things. And I remember kind of reading this kind of research and beginning to think in my own mind, how does that apply to us in the classroom when we're trying to kind of scaffold and build these kind of engaging learning environments for young people? And sometimes the technology can be an enormous help in this regard to the teacher who's trying to build engaging, memorable moments for young people. In this particular picture, you can see a picture of one of our biology classes in the Borders in the Inspire Learning program. And this teacher is actually using Apple Classroom, the Apple Classroom app. Now, you can't actually see it. It's on the teacher device. She's asked at the beginning of a lesson on enzymes, she said, "Can everybody please go to their photo album? Can you make sure that you put on the screen in front of you an emoji that describes how confident you feel about moving on to the next stage of learning? Now, each young person's done that across the entire class. And what the teacher has is a snapshot immediately, instantly, live of the entire class and how confident they feel. And I watched as this particular teacher was able to differentiate her lesson by the amount of support she gave specific young people based on the feedback that she'd taken right at the very beginning of the lesson. It was truly formative. It made a huge difference. And it's a very, very simple way that idea of technology, when it's brought together, when it's safely managed, and when it's deployed in a way which is in the hands of every learner, but actually begins to make a transformational difference, not just to the learner, but also to the job of the teacher. And you can see again here, and we've seen one of the things that I think is part of the beauty of the iPad and part of the Inspire Learning program is that we have 4 key principles that we adhere to. One is a principle of mobility. So we want to make sure that the devices we put in our young people's hands are truly mobile. And that means that the classroom can be a traditional classroom. It could be a sports field. It can be an art gallery. It could be at home. It could be in anywhere that could become a learning space. And true mobility facilitates some amazing learning in amazing spaces and amazing places. So it has to be mobile. It has to be personal. And again, we want to make sure that the devices that we put into young people's hands are able to be personalized to make sure that they take account of the learning needs of that young person. So they can be personalized to tint the screen. They can be personalized to read or strip out distracting content, and all of that can be done in a way which makes learning more accessible for young people. So it has to be mobile, it has to be personal, it has to be collaborative, and we focused a lot on this. It has to allow collaboration between young people, between their teachers, between different groups. It has to allow sometimes young people to take courses that maybe are not in the physical space in which they're learning. So a number of our schools in the borders are now offering certificate courses that can be taken online, and young people can join from whatever school they're in, and they can just join via their iPad and collaborate in that particular way. It also needs to facilitate collaboration with parents and that kind of backwards forwards workflow that includes the wider community of the school in the learning experiences of those young people. So some of these things are absolutely really key and critical for us. And it also has to build digital skills. And we're focusing right now on digital skills, and specifically in this instance, coding, beginning to understand the literacy of code from a very young age. We're developing a coding pathway that stretches right from early years right through to the end of secondary school, and being able to do that again in a way that incorporates some of these tools that I've spoken about. The idea that the iPads are all safely managed, that they can be accessed at any one time, that content can be shared with them in a way which is equitable, and that everybody can begin to participate in the same lesson. And some of these things are absolutely key. Creativity is at the heart of so much of what we do, and it's at the heart of what employers are looking for now in this kind of modern world. They want young people to be able to problem solve, to apply creative skills towards solving challenging problems in industry. And one of the things we love about the devices that we put in the hands of our young people is it facilitates powerful uses of creativity and technology at the heart of the creative process. Sometimes that is in traditionally creative subjects like art and design or music, but other times it can be in quite unexpected places. The teacher that shared this example with me was quite keen to put it on Twitter, but she said, I don't really want to because I kind of think that nobody will really understand what's happening in this particular example. It's a science lesson. What the teachers asked the class to do is to create a keynote that shows the differences in speed between different animals. Now, you can see, obviously, we've got a pink bunny hopping and we've got a black and white horse that's moving at a faster pace. And this was a second year class. What we can't see and what isn't immediately visible is that the student that created this particular piece of content has Down syndrome, was able to actually participate in the same task as all the rest of the young people in her class. Not only that, she was able to use the technology to personalize the content she created. So she chose pink for the rabbit because pink was her favorite color. She was even able to work to make the color of the horse's nose white rather than black, because that was similar to the horse that one of our friends had. So that idea of being accessible and using the technology creatively in a science lesson, but actually being able to bring the whole class really along on some really significant learning experience, incredibly powerful. And we see this at every possible level of learning. We see that the power of what the technology does. And again, this is an example from a more senior physics class where they're looking at fairly significant concepts and being able to visualize those concepts in a way that the technology allows us to do without having to physically go outside and be able to work with huge distances. But in actual fact, we're able to take the theoretical and we're able to take the practical, and we're able to bring them together, or young people can bring them together to begin to work out some of these projects in a very visual way. And for me, that's really powerful, because the teacher, again, that shared this particular piece of content with me, she said that the young people were then able to use the resources that they created, these worked examples of problems, share them with other learners in the class, and they become really useful examples themselves as learning resources. And that's not just simply what the young folks can do in the classes, but it's also what the teachers themselves can do. And again, this is an example from advanced higher physics, a concept which can sometimes be very difficult for young people to grasp. But for the teacher to be able to create this in a very, very visual way, essentially a description of an introduction to radians. She said that for the first time in 15 years of teaching this content, young people were grasping it first time without being necessarily needing to have too much reinforcement of that concept afterwards. And, you could look at that and you could say, well, that could be something that could be accessed on YouTube. But actually, we've seen that the young people value being able to hear their own teacher's voice, to be able to feel that it is bespoke content that's being created with reference to their learning and exactly where they are to take them forward. So it's something that I really feel very privileged to work in this area, where we're helping teachers to begin to create memorable moments where there's elevation or insight, moments of pride for our young people, and moments that help them really truly connect with sometimes very complex concepts in their education. And these kind of things are really at the core for me of what it means to be a teacher, what it means to be able to create something in your classroom that even years later you get stopped in a petrol station to be reminded of how exciting and engaging that particular piece of content was. And spotting these moments for us is really key. And it's something that's understood all over the world. This is an example from a South American tribe who spot the moment where a young boy becomes a man. And it's accompanied by a very painful experience where they have to put their hand into these gloves that are filled with what are called fire ants. I can't imagine that's very, very pleasant, and I would certainly not want to do it myself. But it marks a moment, because at the end of that experience, the young person is put up on the shoulders of the village and celebrated by everybody around, so that they will never forget the moment when they passed a specific milestone in their development. And I think for us, hopefully we don't make them quite as painful as that, but we'd like to kind of build them in such a way that people remember them. So I'm almost done. And you know, now that we've worked on a number of projects, some of the key things that maybe are there for takeaways for any of you out there that are thinking about venturing into large-scale deployment, that you're looking at tools like Jamf in terms of creating like a safe and managed environment for some of these devices. You want to enable some of the kind of creativity that hopefully I've shown you a little bit of this afternoon. There's some really kind of key things to take away. And we'd like to maybe share an example of that on Thursday when we look at how all of this has come to life in Selkirk High School in the Borders, and they'll be joining me on Thursday to do a kind of follow-up to today's session. But here's some key takeaways from us. Aim high. We want to try and make this learning environment the best possible learning environment in the world for our young people. We want to use the resources and the skills in the community in which we live, find great people, back them to be great, and then really support them. Ask the right questions, and hopefully today, you know, you've at least come to sort of a great place to be asking the right questions for what you need to do to move forward. There's a huge amount of resources out there. Sometimes it's about making a specific decision, not just about the decision that you make. You know, most technology tools now are fairly workable, but it's about making the right decision and then providing consistency around about that. Working as one team, and we've been really privileged to work very closely with the guys at Jamf, who have been part of our Inspire Learning team, our friends of Inspire Learning, and helped us to really start to craft our project in a way that has brought some of the benefits that I've shown you today. So there's some little takeaways that you may be interested in. And I think this is kind of where we're at right now. And I'll finish with this particular slide, but there's nothing particularly innovative about giving devices out to young people. As I say, it will very shortly become the default position that every young person will have some device in their bag, in their backpack as they leave the house for school in the morning. And certainly in Scotland, that's a matter of months away. But there's nothing really innovative about that. It's all about the innovation that we enable. How do we enable innovation, creativity in learning, problem solving, and these key skills that we're looking to develop so that young people can thrive in this increasingly digital world that we live in. So hopefully that's given you a little bit of an insight or an introduction to some of the Inspire Learning program. I'm really looking forward to any of you that can make it back on Thursday. You're more than welcome to come and to meet up with us again as we talk to Selkirk and we see what this looks like in live, if you like, in their school. So I want to say a big thank you from me. I'll stop sharing my screen, and hopefully that makes sense. I can see there's a couple of questions in the chat that maybe I could help with. How do we bring reluctant teachers along? It's a great question, and it's something that in a bizarre way we've been helped enormously by the pandemic, because I used to have to kind of convince teachers that technology in the classroom was potentially a good idea, some of them. And in actual fact, we have this kind of like the water table, if you like, of skills has developed and has grown over the course of the pandemic. So we have a number of key skills that have been developed in teachers just out of necessity, if nothing else. And the teaching profession has been absolutely incredible over the past 18 months. In terms of reluctance, I think the key thing for me is transformation happens by doing small but significant things consistently. It's not about trying to kind of showcase some kind of new skill that will blow everybody's minds. It's about taking a really simple thing that you can add value to a young person's or to a teacher's experience and showing them that so that they can do it consistently. So for example, using the iPad as a visualizer, you know, it makes a huge difference to many teachers' experience. And some little things like that, giving feedback in a much more kind of time efficient way. Again, it can transform the life of a teacher and sometimes bring the most reluctant teachers on board. So I think that would be my answer from that perspective. In terms of the biggest benefits that NDM has brought, I think that when we began many years ago, back in 2010, We didn't have the benefit of a mobile device management system. So the idea of consistency was something that we hoped for, and it was very much left to the individual teachers in the classroom. Now, I think one of the huge benefits with MDM is that we have a quality control and level of consistency that we can actually apply across all of our participating schools, classrooms, and actually begin to use that as a support mechanism for teachers and a way to allow teachers to curate content, to share with one another, and to begin to really kind of provide the most impactful use of the technology in the classroom. So the MDM for me has been an absolute game changer. I think it's important that you work with people that understand education relative to your MDM. And for us, certainly in the projects we've worked with, that is the key really to working with Jamf. And I'm looking forward to many more years of working with the team there. And I think for me, hopefully, that is me. We don't have. Is there a way to have this program on macOS as we don't have iPads for high school and middle school? We also use Google Classroom. One of the great things, obviously, with Google Classroom is that it runs across any platform or any device. I know many schools that I know of that use it consistently and very well on iPad. Sorry, that was me by accident calling the police. Yeah, so no, I mean Jamf will absolutely facilitate that, and again, it's a hugely important backup, if you like, for your school. So I would really encourage you to look into that. So thank you. Okay, thank you. I think that's the main questions that have come up in the chat. I just want to, for me personally, say thank you so much for today. It's been a real pleasure to be part of the Back to School Festival, and I'm looking forward to Thursday when we get to talk to Selkirk. Feel free to join us there, and we'll look forward to showcasing more of the Inspire Learning project to you all. So thank you to all of you at Jamf, and obviously thank you to you guys for joining us today. Thanks very much.
Hi everyone, my name is Abdul Chauhan. I'm the VP of Learning at Shobi, and today I'm going to be speaking about empowering educators. I think probably the most powerful thing anyone can ever do for education is to empower educators, free them and give them the opportunities, the freedoms, the tools to be able to do the things that they do best. And we're going to explore how Shobi allows that to happen, and be able to kind of demonstrate some opportunities where really innovative tools can empower educators. So my background is as an educator since 1998. I was a former high school principal located just outside Manchester in the UK. I've also founded my own school here in the UK as part of a free school setup. And I'm the chair of the board there. And I suppose before COVID, I started to kind of travel to a variety of different countries and had the opportunities to work with some amazing teams in different parts of the world. And as part of that, I met educators that were really inspirational and in many cases empowered as well. So let's kind of talk about this, and let me kind of start off with a bit of a story. This young man that's holding the Olympic torch goes by the name of Gulwali. Gulwali was a student of mine. He came to me from Afghanistan many years ago when the war first happened. He came to us not speaking English. He came to us not knowing whether his parents were alive. And, you know, teachers suddenly needed to be different. We had a whole wave of refugee children that came to my school. And one of the things that we did there was we gave out technology to every teacher, to every student. And for me, that was empowerment. Empowerment, not just because we gave a shiny device out. Empowerment because they suddenly had tools and opportunities to do things that they couldn't do before. They could translate, they could look things up, and students could do that as well. And that kind of empowerment drove the ability for the teacher and for the student to do things that probably would not have been possible without, and the acceleration through which they learned language and they were able to access learning became really powerful. Gulwali went on to become a university graduate at the University of Manchester, and beyond that he also went and published his own book, which has been translated into multiple languages, and he now regularly appears on breakfast shows and TV and so on, fighting for the plight of his people. But for me, this is a classic example of how, you know, teachers being empowered, students being empowered with the right tools, allow them to kind of progress based on their passion and their own desire to do well. So let's just have a look at this. Shobi is a hybrid learning platform. Is it the same as blended learning? Those two terms are used quite interchangeably. And the simple answer to that is no. Hybrid learning is a protocol that will ensure that learning will continue regardless of any disruption in the physical buildings or the ability for students to come to school or not. That means they can continue learning beyond school hours. Blended learning is when actually technology is being used, but there's actually a lot of the face-to-face is not disrupted. So you can actually have blended learning as part of a hybrid learning approach. And hybrid learning doesn't mean that you don't have any face-to-face. You can still have face-to-face, but actually your systems and the approach to learning is designed so that students can continue and teachers can continue to access things beyond school hours, beyond the classroom as well. But actually within the classroom, it's still just as powerful. So let's just have a look at some of the things that are absolutely possible with Shobi and that really kind of empower teachers. And for me, there are some examples that are kind of irrefutable in many ways, and the ability to kind of change things and make things happen is absolutely possible. So let's just kind of have a look at that. So if I just go into this maths class, Of course, Shobi has this kind of very simple and easy approach. The layout is super simple. You have folders for organization and so on. That in itself is actually quite powerful for teachers and allows them to organize assignments and so on in the right places. If I was to kind of go into a specific class or a specific assignment, and I go into an actual assignment, what we then see is the fact that the teacher can see their students. Now, for me, one of the things that was really kind of useful around this was the fact that as a teacher, you could actually see all your students in one place, and you could continue to actually communicate with them outside school hours, because you can see all the students that are here, and you could continue to communicate with them, and they could continue to send things outside school hours as well, or right within the classroom when students are shy, or they might not always want to put their hand up and so on. So let's kind of go into this. If I go into shared items, what we see here is something pretty simple. You see a set of activities, but this is what I mean by empowerment, right? Look at the second task here, all right? What we see is it says create a tutorial video using Explain Everything to answer the extension question. Please remember to use the correct mathematical vocabulary. For me, this is empowering educators because the fact that the teachers can ask the students to actually create a video where they will speak and explain something is far more empowering than asking the students just to do something in a book and then they have to show they're working out, and then the teachers are trying to figure out what was going on in the child's mind when they were trying to solve that problem. Okay, and there are some amazing ways in which that can happen. If we tap on a student, if I tap on Sally, for example, by the way, don't worry, these are not real students. What you can now see is Sally has kind of submitted this tutorial on improper fractions. Okay, this is what the teacher asked for. Now, what's really great about this is that obviously, and I'm just going to mute the volume on this. Sally is explaining this. You might be able to kind of hear this as well.
A teacher asked two children to sort 73 tennis balls into baskets of 10 balls, filling the baskets where possible. Express how many baskets are filled using a mixed number. So first we need to underline the key information. So one of the key informations are that there is a mixed number and we have to write it in a mixed number. The rest of the key information is that there are 73 tennis balls and we're sorting it into baskets.
If I just move this along.
7, and there's 3 left over, so 7 remainder 3. So now we need to try convert that into a mixed number. So if it's 7 holds, it's just going to be 7 holds.
So what we see here, and I'm just kind of going to pause this, what's powerful here is the fact that Sally can actually write the expression. So they're still writing and they're explaining something, but the metacognition, the thinking that's going on in the brain about how to do this, using the right vocabulary. I mean, you can see from and hear from this that Sally is actually very confident doing this. And these are things that you actually cannot get from an actual a book, right? You're not going to get to hear the degree of confidence that Sally has. I'm not saying that nothing should happen on books. Of course, you can. And there are great examples in Shobi where actually teachers are empowered even more. So even handwritten things, documents that would typically be handed out through a lot of admin, photocopying, printing, giving it out, giving the sheets out to all the students in the class. And then the students begin to kind of then write on this. Those things can now be done digitally, and you're able then to kind of pass this on very, very easily. And what's also kind of powerful and very empowering for teachers is the fact that you can have very simple day-to-day workflows that are completely redefined. So, for example, if Sally had wanted to submit a book, she could quite easily tap on the plus icon, choose something like scan document, and suddenly you now have this kind of a photocopier. Your device turns into a photocopier. So you've taken a picture, you then turn the page over, grab another one, right? And Sally could do this, and then you can see they're being collected at the bottom. If I hit the save button, that will then give me the option to upload this as a single document. And when I do this, that document is then uploaded for Sally, because I have highlighted Sally here. And when I've done this, very simply, those pages are now available. And again, the empowerment factor here is the fact that students don't have to give up handwritten approaches. This could have been a piece of art. This could have been something that the student might have modeled out of clay. This could be something that they've made in engineering, but it's been uploaded. And of course, handwritten stuff here, super clear. Better than going to the photocopier and printing. And now the teacher is empowered again, because they can actually now begin to kind of mark this. They can highlight things. They can do a bunch of things that they would have done on paper, but they're doing this here, as well as being able to add voice notes and video and so on as well. So this is kind of really powerful. And of course, where I find this really interesting is if I just go back into here again, and just like this teacher has done here, I have this amazing feature called quick marking. If I tap on that and go to Erica, very quickly Erica's work pops up. Now, this might not seem like much, but for a teacher, the amount of workload that this reduces is highly significant. Typically, teachers would be carrying all these books home, and they would have to sit down, they open the right page, and then they'd be marking, and then they'd open all. Usually, a lot of teachers would mark the same page in the book, and then turn over in everybody's book and mark the same page, so they get an idea of how well students have performed. But this takes care of all of that. You have amazing things like the voice note feature here. I can play that.
Super understanding of what an improper fraction is and what a mixed number is, and you were able to use the pictures on this worksheet to write an improper fraction and a mixed number. Well done.
So this is actually quite powerful. The fact that I can add a voice note, again, is very empowering for teachers. The less time they spend on bureaucratic things and paper-based approaches that take up a lot of the time for teachers, the more we empower teachers to do amazing things, give more feedback, be able to connect, spend more time connecting with students, and so on. So overall, these features are highly empowering for educators. The other thing that I will show you in Shobi, which I think is hugely powerful, if I go to another class, we're actually allowing teachers to do a variety of things that are significantly different. If I was to go into this PSHE class and I go into this check-in blobs, and if I just go to shared items, this is something that is built into Shobi on iPad that allows you to actually record the screen as well as have the front-facing camera on to give instruction. Hello everyone, and welcome to the class. So today I'm going to introduce you to the blob tree, and this is an assignment I want you all to complete, and it's very much about you explaining. And if I just pause this and forward this on, what you'll then see further down the line is I can actually begin to annotate and speak and record all at the same time. And I'm going to choose a slightly thicker pen. And the way I would do this is, for example, today I'm feeling very happy and I'm at the top of the tree. So I'm this person, okay? And the reason why I'm feeling really... And you get the idea. This could be marking a book. This could be giving feedback to students. I think the possibilities with this is really powerful. And again, it empowers teachers to be able to really focus and provide really high quality feedback for their students. I also feel like Shobi is moving into territories that are really innovative, and the ability to kind of use tools that are really developing, and and file types that are coming out of the technology industry, and again, empowering teachers to design new types of activities is pretty powerful. So if I just go into science, for example, here, and if I was to go into space, and I think we've known for a long time that Shobi is pretty unique in many ways, because it allows teachers to use the Google platform or the Microsoft platform or Apple files and the Apple platform, and it gives teachers real versatility in the way in which they use different resources. And to this, if I just go into Solar System, we can now, if I just go into shared items, you can begin to add something called reality files and USDZ files. So these are quite innovative and unique files. If I tap on the cosmonaut here, you'll see my camera opens up and these two guys suddenly land. And if I just tap on them, they then begin to interact. And this is pretty amazing, right? And students can actually, and teachers can actually build activities around this, whether that's questions, explorations, looking things up, reading things through, and so on. Or even if they are just simply going to describe something, if it's in an English lesson or so on, the opportunity to kind of do this is pretty powerful, right? I can twist this guy around, I can do a bunch of things here as well, and hey, you get a real kind of possibility to kind of interact with this in lots of different ways. So I hope that kind of makes sense to kind of inform you about the innovative nature of Shobi, and the many ways in which Shobi really empowers teachers to do things that simply were not possible in the past. So let's just go back and kind of wrap this up. One of the things I do kind of want to tell you about is the fact that there's also a bunch of class setup features, we don't have time to go through everything, but the fact that students can log in with a QR code and it batch produces QR codes for younger children to join into. Class copying is a huge opportunity for teachers to be empowered, right? Year on year, teachers can just make a new class with their resources automatically in there from the preparation that they did the year before. That saves significant amount of time in kind of re-looking for resources. It stops you from printing and having filing cabinets full of printed paper for the following year and so on. So the class copying feature is really powerful, especially as a back to school kind of feature, and this is kind of widely used by teachers all over the world. The fact that you can copy assignments and schedule them and time them from when they will be locked and then view only, and you just want the students to see the video, and then the teachers can make them editable and writable, and then lock them again, and being able to do that in one sitting where the teachers decides to sit there and plan everything through, so it'll automatically lock, view, unlock, and lock again at scheduled times is actually pretty powerful as well. There are lots of amazing ways in which teachers can do quick marking. I showed you an example, uploading work, and then you can just kind of work through students. You can mark a few students. There's really powerful ways to customize notifications and from the activity center that allows teachers to kind of be notified of specific assignments or specific classes or even specific students when they submit something as well. Voice notes has long been a favorite of mine. I implemented this in my own school in the past when I was a principal, and with a variety of different organizations around the world that have really looked for innovative ways of doing feedback and empowering teachers. Voice notes notes has been actually a real favorite of educators. The fact that I can just tap something and give feedback on it is hugely empowering. The integration with other tools, like the video that I showed you was to explain everything. Again, a really powerful tool. The ability to kind of, capture the teacher's kind of explanation and thought processes, and vice versa, the ability to capture the students' thoughts and so on is really powerful. And of course, there's also a Socrative integration, which is really about quizzing and assessment, which is a really powerful feature because it actually does all the marking and reporting for teachers. And that these are really kind of empowering things. So finally, I will kind of say that, assessment, you can design for creativity and engagement as well. And as we've seen, technology is a significant, provides us a significant opportunity to reduce workload. And overall, that means that we are freeing up teachers to do a lot more. My final things before I kind of finish is parental engagement. Teacher-parent communication is hugely empowering. It allows parents to be part of the conversation. And the whole idea between teacher-parent conferences was something where this was kind of done once in a year, twice in a year. And believe you me when I say that actually that day is a real kind of difficult day for teachers, a very long day, because you're teaching and then in the evening you're meeting parents, and it can take up a lot of time. I think that the likes of Shobi makes this so much easier. The transparency that parents get, parents can see it on their phones, they can listen to the teacher speaking, and the reason why this is so crucial is because of a variety of different research bodies, including this one, the Education Endowment Fund, that talks about how schools can optimize the ability to kind of work with parents, right? Making learning transparent, encouraging parents to watch tutorials like the one that you saw being made by teachers even sometimes, and the fact that the parents can then be in a better position to support their children as well. And also Shobi can allow teachers to give great feedback and tips to parents as well, using our groups feature. So I'll finish with this, but actually empowerment is really powerful. It's something that every teacher should be able to kind of have in their armory of tools, and by giving the best possible tools to our teachers, we are empowering them. I'm going to finish with this particular note for us to kind of think about the possibilities and what the future actually holds. And I will say thank you very much for listening to me. And if you need any further information, or you want to reach out or have more discussions around any of the things that I've said, feel free to reach out to me here. Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for listening. I'm very happy to take questions. I believe I've kind of been answering some questions that have been in the chat as we've been going along. But yeah, I mean, absolutely happy to answer questions. I think, Amira, you were asking me about, is there a way to have this program on Mac OS as you don't have iPads? That's absolutely fine. We have a variety of different schools that are using this. So there are schools that are using Chromebook and they've been using Google Classroom, and now they kind of want to see where else they can go. They want to take the assessment and feedback stuff a bit further, because Shobi Socrative focuses only on assessment and feedback. It's not a learning management system. All the tools that get invented and innovated for it is very much around looking at assessment and feedback. So yes, absolutely, whether you're using Chromebook or whether you're using a PC or whether you're using iPad, this is something that can be rolled out in a school. And I'm again just reach out to me if you want to kind of see that with your team. Happy to do that as well. Yeah, the app is free on the App Store. You can download it, and I think there's like a free version that you can use, so you can test it out and see what it's like, and it's pretty easy to use. But I would recommend that if you download the free version, do it with your students actually joining into your class. Don't just download it, because there'll be nothing in there. It's just blank. It's a blank canvas. Okay. But if you have students can download the app on their devices, or actually just go onto the browser at showbe.com and create a free student account and be able to kind of join in from there. It works by creating a code that you can give to children. The children put the code in and they automatically join you in the class. And then you kind of have, you're able to do all the things that, I was kind of demonstrating there. And it's super, super easy to use. Even for younger children, you can it does all the QR code stuff that I mentioned. So absolutely free. If you want to know about costings, I'm not the person to kind of talk about that, because I don't deal with all that kind of stuff. I'm very much working with schools and talking about pedagogy and learning and so on. However, the approach that Showbe uses is that it's cost per year per teacher, not for the students. For students, it's always free. So if you want to know about that, I can definitely connect you to the right people as well. Just drop me a message. I'll be more than happy to connect you as well. Okay. Are there any other questions? Feel free to send them over. I'm happy to wait. Okay, well, if that's the case, then, my email is there on screen. Absolutely feel free to reach out to me. You can also get me on Twitter at Abdul Chohan. I'm more than happy to kind of speak to people or speak to school teams and so on as well. And apart from that, thank you very much for joining. I really appreciate you taking the time to listen to what I had to say. Thank you.
Hello and welcome to our Fireside Chat. My name is Aaron Webb and I'm the Product Marketing Manager for Education here at Jamf. I've got a very special guest with me here this afternoon. I've got Matt Pullen, famous ADE, Twitter legend in terms of EDU and all things Apple, as well as Microsoft and Google, but we'll come on to that a bit later. Welcome, Matt. Thank you for joining me.
Pleasure to be here. And yeah, maybe I should pay you to be my agent or something with that introduction. But yeah, thanks.
Great to have you here. Can you give the viewers a little bit about your background, about how you started in education, and then we'll move on to sort of like what is an ADE as well. So if we can start with
of course. Yeah, I'll keep it as brief as I can. So I've been an educator for 20 years now. Started out as a PE teacher. I think I always wanted to be a teacher from being in school. I loved school. I was one of those kids who, you know, will always look back on my time in education really, really fondly, and loved sport. And so it just kind of naturally led to, you know, being that type of teacher. The one thing I would say, I've always been a bit of a champion of the underdogs. Although I was fairly good at sport myself, I always remember having like friends who weren't great at sport and seeing how they responded in lessons. I think that's kind of shaped me to be the teacher that I became, someone that tried to look for alternative ways to engage and enthuse, which I suppose has ultimately led me to the whole role of technology, because it is a tool to help you do exactly that. So yeah, became a PE teacher back in 2001. And then, you know, gradually moved to where I am now, working in university with future teachers, so training them at the very kind of start of their careers.
Excellent, that's great. So let's rewind a little bit. So PE teacher, what was your first interaction with like Apple technologies? Like, where did that come in? Where did it land in your hand? And then how did that process to becoming an ADE start?
So there's a bit of a tie-up here between the personal and the professional, right? So I won't go into the whole detail, but I was on my honeymoon in New York when the iPad landed, the very first iPad. And it was, you know, a shiny device. I had an iPhone and loved using it, and thought, I'm going to get myself an iPad. And my wife kind of questioned why do you need that? And on the spot, I came up with it'll be great for teaching, because she never asked me about teaching. So therefore I thought I'll get away with this. But on this day, she decided to say, all right, how will you use it? And I thought, oh, okay. So just thinking about that original iPad, what could I use it for? And it was just simply the fact that I would have access to the internet on the device and be able to model to students what they could do. Because, you know, back when I was teaching, we taught 17 different sports in a year. You know, we tried to give students the wealth of experience. And, you know, I'm not an expert in any of them, let alone, you know, being an expert even just a few. So having the power of YouTube and having the power of being able to just show students, this is what this activity looks like. This is what doing a somersault looks like. This is what a smash in badminton looks like. That was a real game changer. So that kind of sprung to mind. Yep, I could use it for that. And then obviously when the second iPad came out with the camera, that just transformed everything, because all of a sudden now it was, I don't need to rely on YouTube for this. I can film the students and they can see themselves. They can see what they're doing right. And we went down the route of comparison videos. You know, you would still import a YouTube video so they could compare themselves to the perfect model. And then it kind of grew from there. I started to see, well, hang on, if this is helping in PE for students to be able to model what they're doing, this could help elsewhere. Like, this is going to give those children that opportunity to do something that they couldn't do before. So we're talking, 2010, this kind of happened, and it was one man and an iPad, which is probably the story. If you ask anyone who started out with iPad, it's like one man and an iPad, or one female and an iPad, whatever it might be, using that device to try and do something with no real support. It was very much, you kind of just played and tried to make things work the best you could. But it did. It made a huge difference. It made a difference to exactly that kind of demographic of student that I was aiming at, which was they don't particularly find a role in education that suits them. and this was a way to give them an alternative role. So I started having students emerge as real leaders. You know, they would say, actually, I can't perform very well, but I can show somebody else how to do it. And I've got this device that gives me something to talk to. You know, I can film someone doing it and then tell them, this is what you can do better. So it absolutely transformed my classroom or my sports hall from what it was before to you know, eventually what it became.
Awesome. I think you saying like one person and an iPad, I think that's how, as you say, everyone started out. I know that's how I started out, or with a box of iPads that I would travel around with, and a MacBook. So yeah. Obviously you're doing all of this great innovative teaching with an iPad. What led you to become an ADE? And for all those who are listening, acronyms are sort of like they're thrown around quite a lot. It means Apple Distinguished Educator. And if you haven't been into the sort of the Apple Education website, go and check out what an Apple Distinguished Educator is, and look for yourself. But what made you aware of the Apple Distinguished Educator program? What was that sort of? How did that land on your lap, and what made you want to apply?
So probably after a while of trying this out myself, I connected with one of the resellers in the UK, because I'd heard that they were helping schools just explore what iPads could do, and they had a system where they would loan you a bank of iPads for a period of time to do a whole pilot. So I spoke to our senior leaders in the school, said it was something I thought we could really explore. You know, again, back in 2010, it really wasn't commonplace. So there was a whole lot of convincing to do. So, you know, I found a group of teachers that would be part of it. We identified a group of students that we thought would be really, really useful to kind of just track. And as part of that, the guy who was working for the company said, "Oh, you should apply to be an ADE on the back of this." Didn't have a clue, no idea what this ADE thing is. And so that was it. That was kind of my introduction, you know, apply for it. So I did. I applied for basically what I didn't even know what it was. You know, it was the promise that I was given was it will connect you with other educators that are doing similar things to you. And that was the sell for me. That was, I don't need to be this one person band in a school anymore, because there are other crazy people out there and I can maybe talk to those other crazy people about everything. So that was it. So yeah, it was, you know, apply in a creative way. We had to make a video, which was interesting in itself because, you know, that was outside of my skill set. But all of a sudden I had this tool that enabled me to do something that I didn't think I could do. And yeah, that was the process. So this kind of, as you said, ADE acronym kind of popped up in my world. And I'll be honest, hugely changed my entire career path from that moment of applying. So, you know, we carried on doing the pilot. It proved to be successful, but it still was so early days. It wasn't just the success of numbers. It was so much more to have to convince senior leadership that this was something that, you know, really could make a difference. So having that community eventually, the ADE community, really kind of helped you realize that you weren't just that lone wolf coming up with crazy thoughts and ideas of how to spend money. It was hugely about impact and measuring that impact.
So you created this video, you applied. What was like the first, what does this look like once you've been accepted? What was the next sort of phase in terms of connecting with this community? What happened following that?
So I think I got my acceptance in about March. So I applied around Christmas time, got accepted, I think it was about March. You know, this was kind of, for me, early days of Twitter. So it wasn't like there was this kind of big world of everybody was talking about this is going to happen. And you just literally check an email and then all of a sudden there's this random one pops up saying you've been selected, congratulations. The next step was all that excitement of you know, finding out people who you did know who were on social media that also were going to this event, and the event was like an induction program, really, where we all gathered. Remember those days when we used to all get together? It was, you know, the heady days before COVID, and we all got together, and it was just crazy. And you'll know because you were in the same event as me back in 2013. that getting together with all of those crazy like-minded people and going from a position of feeling like you were fighting a system and fighting tradition to being in a room of, I think there was about 300 to 400 of us who were all on the same page, who were all probably about, that same journey in terms of doing things, but all from very different backgrounds. And all of a sudden feeling like you weren't on your own anymore. And actually there were people that could help, people that could support, people that had made that mistake the same as you'd made, people that were just about to make that mistake that you could help, people that had made a million other mistakes that you could learn from as well. And it was such an uplifting experience to know that there was an alternative to what was happening before. And that was the thing for me about it. Community, bringing people together and sharing experiences and finding solutions to problems.
And your class of what year?
Class of 2013.
2013, which I believe is the best class ever.
It has been mentioned once or twice, best class ever.
So can you just expand a little bit on why ADEs talk about like the best class ever? It gets sort of called out quite a few times when someone says they're an ADE class of 2013, and then someone will say best class ever. But for those looking on, what does that mean? Why do people say that?
I just think you find a family. You find a family in that moment of people who have had shared experience up to that point, right? So you've all applied probably just about the year before, right? So you apply in 2012, you become AD class of 2013. So at that point, there was a lot of things would have happened that we would all have gone through, be it the introduction of a new application or the hurdles of trying to update 100 devices through one iTunes account or whatever it might be. It's that shared experience. And then couple that with the fact that you have that physical experience together where everybody's in the same conference room talking about those things and making those connections. I think someone stood on the stage and said to us, you will remember these people forever. You will make lifelong friends. And you kind of sit there and think, that might be a bit cheesy. And wow, is it true? Like, it's just that, I'm connected with you from those days. I've got so many other connections I have where that moment just really cemented that community, and you can absolutely rely on them. It's like instant friendship. Maybe nowadays it's like people see that in Love Island or something, those people get together and they're like lifelong friends, but this is real meaningful kind of impact where people have got that shared kind of vision of what they think technology will do. And it's all about learning. And we listened to, and we did some presentations ourselves, didn't we, about our story, and the stories aren't about us. The stories about the learners and what they've done. And it's that inspiration that, we are making a difference here. And I suppose back in 2013, it was a bigger hurdle because we hadn't gone over the tipping point yet of technology being the talking point. But I suppose knowing that it was having such a big impact on people meant that you went back to school, the following year and went, I'm going to go this all guns blazing. And I've got kind of this army of people behind me and stories to tell.
No, it sounds really good. I know that the networking is absolutely key. So what's the sort of takeaways that you've really resonated with you and thought, like, that's the person I need to connect with. That's the element that I could enhance my skill set on to sort of further develop me, but also further impact on my school, the students that I'm teaching. What sort of was the main points that really stuck out for you that you was like, that's the person I need to connect with?
Yeah, I think it's the idea that schools are terrible for being silos at the best of times. And then when you're kind of in that silo within a school, and then your school is a silo in itself, going to somewhere where you can talk to a whole range of educators, from higher education to early years, across every single subject area, huge specialisms in things that I can only ever hope to know about in great detail. People that were back then, coding and doing all of that, which, was something that I could only ever dream of doing. But then they talk to you in a language that you understand and you realize it's all possible. And not only is it possible, they're happy to help you. And not only are they happy to help you, they literally will help you. So, you know, the amount of times that I've called on someone and they've either dropped into a lesson because they're fairly local, or, you know, they've talked you through an approach of what you could do. And then the other thing, I suppose, from my point of view back then, I was just a head of department in a school. So therefore, you know, I had some sway in terms of leadership, but there were several levels above me. There were other leaders within that community, and you could call on them as well. So there were head teachers in the group. There were, you know, people that had to have those difficult conversations. And again, calling on them to say, look, I've got this challenge, help. You know, what language do I need to go with? What's the key points that you would use if you were talking to your you know, colleagues about this? And I think that's the huge takeaway, is it wasn't about the product. It was about learning. Everything in those, you know, it's Apple Distinguished Educator, but the educator bit probably should be all the capital letters, because it is about education, and it's hugely about the difference the stuff can make for learners in the classroom. So yeah, the takeaway is the people and the experiences that they have.
And yeah, and I think you know, from the community of like building up that network of people, that you've got your go-to people. If you want to know about green screen, it's this ADE. If you want to talk to someone about coding, it's this ADE. So, and my experience as well is that they are happy to help and happy to reach out. And it's just a family sharing knowledge into one big pool, which is helping students. So in terms of when you become an ADE, how did it change your approach when you went back into school? Was it easier? I know you had this network to pull on, but did anything change that you was just like, no, I'm not going to do that anymore. This is the way I'm going to do it.
I'm quite a headstrong person at the best of times, but I think having a network of hundreds of people behind you and kind of that validation that what you're doing is right probably just gave me more confidence to speak a bit louder and say, you know, I think this is definitely something that we have to do. On return, I did venture out of my department. You know, before that, it was easy for me to do things in my department because I was head of department. So therefore, you have that ownership. When I went back to school, one of my goals was to move this across the school and actually get digital leaders on board from across different subjects, people that had a bit of a passion for it themselves and wanted to know more. So I kind of felt that there was a bit more of a vehicle, a bit more of a journey I could go on to actually make that difference. And I suppose that confidence of knowing that the journey you were on was right. You might not always get it right, you know, and learn from those things, but you were on the right path. This wasn't just a gimmick, flash in the pan type thing, because there were so many stories of impact. That really changed my trajectory of what I wanted to do. So I went from maybe being quite siloed myself and looking inwards at those things that I wanted to do to actually venturing out to share more. So I did start going to other schools to help other educators with things. And then ultimately, like I said, you know, fast forward that 10 years, I'm now in higher education working with future teachers and also, you know, going around the world and training schools and leaders on what the potential is for this, because those start points gave me that confidence to know it was the right thing to do.
Great. And where you are now, helping other teachers and taking all of your experience that you've learned over the years, what would be your advice to a teacher who's just getting an iPad now for the first time? I know you said it was probably harder back then because it was not easy to deploy and you were sort of like fighting upstream because it was against the sort of the norm. But we've seen lots and lots of devices drop into the hands of teachers over the last 18 months with sort of not so much training, not so much time to plan and come up with a vision, but just kind of like react. I know many schools have had time to sort of build up a really a conscious approach to sort of delivering teaching and learning through the use of technology. What would your advice be to someone who's just had an iPad drop into their hands for the first time?
I think the simple thing is try and connect with as many people as you can. I mean, if you're on social media, you will find people that you can connect with, you know, hashtag Edtech, follow Jamf, follow Apple, you know, any of those, and you'll find people talking about the product from an education point of view. I think the other thing is as well, you're not a lone wolf, right? Certainly these days, there's an awful lot more support. There should be a lot more support in your school situation. And the one thing I struggled with is I felt I also had to be the IT technician, right? Because I've got this device that I wasn't given by the school, so therefore maybe I should look after it. And that's not the case now, because in order for the stuff to work, there is so much stuff that goes on behind the scenes to make it work. And that can be a minefield if you try doing that on your own. So, like I said, there are so many people that will be able to advise and support with those things. So it's hugely about making those connections. Talk to the IT department, talk to them about managing the devices, and they may well have something like Jamf in place. So as soon as you know that's there, you've got that confidence to know that, okay, I don't need to manage the device. I don't need to worry about the software updates and all of those things, because actually that's been taken care of. And then it narrows down your focus on what it is you need to do with the device. So then if your focus is on your curriculum and your planning and your impact on the students, that's great, right? Because it just alleviates all those other things. And you're only going to know that if you connect with people, if you find out other people that have gone through that journey, find out other people that are in your school that are doing it, because they probably are. Again, social media helps us because it allows us to make those connections. But equally, there's probably someone in the classroom next to you who might already have those connections. So that's definitely a great starting point.
Yeah, and I think going back to knowing who your network is and where their expertise are and I know a teacher should be just focusing on delivering the best quality lessons for their students, but sometimes that infrastructure is a barrier, or the iPad is a completely new device to the IT systems that are already in place. Like a majority of schools might be using Windows and PCs, and then suddenly there's an Apple device to manage. How do you, and that falls then probably on the Apple Distinguished Educator, or that tech coordinator or computing lead, in order to sort of charge forward with the use of the iPads. How do you upskill your own knowledge in order to have those conversations with IT about things to put in place to make it much easier to use in the classroom?
I think it's that conversation about what do you need the stuff to do, because they will probably have the answers to those things. And to know that you can probably provide some of your connections to them to help them in that process. I know over the years, Aaron, I've called on you for answers to many things that IT have asked me, and I don't know the answer to it. So I've asked you, and then I've passed on your response to them, and that's solved the problem. And I think that's the thing, isn't it? Like, the world is moving so quickly, so therefore you can't wait till that next training day for an answer, and you can't wait for that opportunity. You've got to kind of grasp it and find those solutions. And like we said, there are lots of solutions to these problems, and I think, when I go back to that kind of idea of one teacher, 40 iPads and one iTunes account back in 2010, and the nightmares that was, and now we have Jamf that kind of just eradicates that whole issue for you, because you don't need to do it that way. You don't have to sit in a really hot room and keep plugging in devices and unplugging them, thankfully. So yeah, again, it goes back to that community. The answers are there for someone to give you that advice. I know for one, I've just gone through the Jamf Educator program, and that just gave me so many more answers to certain things. Thinking, I'd never even realized that was a thing. Now I know it. It's not necessarily that I will do that role, but I can definitely talk to someone with the right vocabulary so that they understand as well. And I think that's the thing sometimes. Talking to many teachers, there's a language barrier between classroom and IT. So you just need to talk on the same language. You might not always understand some of the technical words that the IT people use, but at least you'll understand what they're talking about when they talk, about, I don't know, I'm trying to think of something, which a port being opened or something that makes sense, that there is something that needs to happen for something else to happen. As a teacher, that, okay, well, that might take time. So I understand that that's something that will happen in due course or something.
And you spoke about Jamf Educator, a brand new platform that we've launched, which I think you was probably one of, if not the first, outside of Jamf to become a Jamf Educator and gain your badge. For those who are not aware of Jamf Educator, it's a new platform that we've launched on September the 1st, and it's a simulation-based program. So you can go through the Jamf apps, Jamf Teacher, to go through the workflows. How did you find that? How did that help you in your understanding of what additional tools Jamf has beside the management tools?
I think for me it was the fact that it was like scenario based. So you felt that you were going through something that you would actually have to go through as an educator, and understanding the role of what, even for me, years ago when someone mentioned an MDM to me, it was like, that's an IT thing. I don't need to worry about that. Seeing the power of all of those little things that IT allows me to do to just make my life a lot easier in the classroom. One of the things that comes up a lot when I talk to teachers is that idea of managing distractions. And the one thing that you get in Jamf Teacher, and obviously you'll learn more about that through understanding the tools, is the ability to manage the distractions. And it's not a case of just stopping students use the device. It's pre-planned to know that there's choice, but there's not so much choice that it becomes a distraction. And I think what's nice about that Jamf Educator program is it just walks you through the steps, but clarifies the why. So the why is always the critical thing. It's not you can do this, so you should do it. It's why should you do this, and what's the impact going to be on the classroom? Because it's all very well saying, you can lock a device and stop students using it, but that's very control based. It's another thing to understand. I see now why I would do that. Why would I limit the choice of apps to X, Y, and Z? Why would I do this? It's because it just means learning can just be focused, which is ultimately what you do in a classroom. You don't always kind of send children to the library and say go for it. Choose whatever you want. You go with something in mind. Find a book which might be around X, Y, or Z, because it narrows the choice, which means you can be more focused. And that's something which I definitely learned. And you not just learned and got a badge on the back of it, but actually the approach in Jamf Educator is something now I'm thinking about. Right, when I'm training people, I need to think more scenario based. I need to focus fully on the why for them, not just that this is what you can do with the tech, but this is why you would do it and this is the impact.
Yeah, I think that's a great call out there. It's not just about the badge. I think we've got two tracks for Jamf Educator. We've got the education track for educators. We've got the EdTech track so that you can be prepared to roll this out across your school and deliver professional learning to other teachers as well. But we've also got this integrations and solutions page as well. We have a marketplace. So we've heard from Shobi earlier. We've got Explain Everything on tomorrow. There's loads of solution partners, Trilby TV, that are in the marketplace. It's worth going to check out because there's so many integrations that you can that we've got with Jamf. The other element we've also got there is sort of our additional learning resources, those webinars that we've created over time, but also links back to Apple, where we've got the Apple Teacher Learning Center. And I know we've spoken about badges. How has the Apple Teacher Learning Center helped you? And can you describe to educators out there what it is and the benefits of using that in conjunction with Jamf Educator?
I think it goes back to that point of educators. Once you become a teacher, that is the start of the journey. It's not the end of the journey. And I don't know how many times I've heard the phrase, the only thing that stays the same in education is that it's always changing. But that's the thing, right? And as educators, we need to constantly be upping our game. We need to constantly be trying to be one step ahead, if you can, of change. And what Apple Teacher, Jamf Educator, and lots of those other programs offer you is in time, relevant training to help you with the basics. It's not going to tell you how to teach. It's going to tell you what you potentially could do to inspire you to do something in your own classroom. So it's not one size fits all. It's not creating everybody to be exactly the same. It's showing everybody the possibilities to allow them to do things differently. I think what Apple Teacher Learning Center and the Apple Teacher Badges offers is an opportunity to explore apps to go beyond what you think they're capable of. And this goes back to Jamf, isn't it? Jamf for me was an MDM, but then I've explored it in more detail and I've realized actually this is really powerful in the classroom. For me as the teacher, I should know about this. If you take something like Keynote, how many times do people compare it directly to PowerPoint or Google Slides? And actually, when you go into Apple Teacher, you realize actually Keynote can be used for coding. It can be used for animation, for movie making. It's actually a really, really diverse application. And sometimes it's finding out those kind of key ideas that allow you to diversify your own thinking and realize that there's so much more there. Yes, the badging is great because it's self-validation, and some people might scoff and laugh at that, but it's important to celebrate success. It's important to kind of recognize that you've gone through something. And I've seen this done fantastically well, where you celebrate that success with your students, so they see that you're learning, because that's such an important thing. You don't want your students to always see you as the expert who never gets anything wrong, because that's quite intimidating. So to share that I'm doing something new, I think is a really, really powerful thing in the classroom as well. And, let's face it, whether we publicly want to admit it or not, everybody wants that validation that I've achieved something today, that's good. And I want to share that with other people, whether it's just sharing it with your mum or sharing it publicly on Twitter.
You called out there Google Slides, Microsoft PowerPoint. I know that you're also involved in, like, you've done the Google program as well, or like the equivalent of Apple Distinguished Educator, but you've gone down the route of Google and Microsoft, but very much Google and or Microsoft on Apple devices. What would you suggest for schools who have thinking, we need to go down the Chromebook route because we've got Google as our Google Classroom to deliver teaching and learning? What would you sort of say to those schools that have got that system in place but want to explore the benefits of Apple and using an Apple device as well?
I think you said it yourself, explore, right? It's Google, Microsoft, Apple, there's this kind of notion that they don't talk to each other and they don't work well, but that's such a myth, because they do. They work really, really well together. And you need to separate what you're doing and what you're doing it on, I think is a key thing for me, because Microsoft 365 and Google Workplace work perfectly well on an iPad. And so lots of the discussions that I have with schools is, okay, we know that you've got the cloud solution. We know you can connect. We know that you have like a cloud place for your storage and collaboration. We know you've got that. So what are you trying to do with the technology? So let's park that and say that's there as your kind of back end. What are you trying to do with the technology? Because if what you want is for all the students to be replicating their books on technology, and you sitting down at a desk is fine, then maybe a laptop is the way forward. But if you want them to be exploring the world in a different way, if you want to give them opportunities to learn in new locations, if you want them to go outdoors, like me as a PE teacher, don't give me a laptop, because I'm not going to ever be sat down somewhere where I have a laptop. But an iPad will change what I'm doing. So all of a sudden now you look for the technology to solve the problem that you have, knowing that you have that solution behind the scenes as well that will connect them all. So lots of the time it is that conversation about, this is what you can do with a mobile device as opposed to a portable device. Laptops are portable. Yes, I can put them in a trolley, get them out, put them on any desk. Any classroom can be an IT room, but anywhere can be an IT room with an iPad, because I can walk around with it. I can go and sit on the grass. I can, all of those different things. So really understand your vision for what it is you're trying to do. Really understand the world of work that these students are going into and what that might look like, and what skills you can help them develop that are beyond maybe just the word processing, creating a presentation type thing. Because there's so much out there for students to explore. It's critical that you do think about the technology from the student's point of view, beyond just access to the internet, maybe.
Yeah, I've seen some great examples of where students have really explored their creative path with like an Apple Pencil or a stylus on an iPad, and then attaching a keyboard to an iPad as well to still do that word processing, or even just splitting the keyboard and using their thumbs. Their younger students are fantastic at adapting to that as well. So,
and I think that's the thing, right? It's, if you can provide a student with as many input opportunities as possible, then they have the choice to be able to demonstrate their learning in as many ways as possible. If you limit it down, if you just give them a keyboard, then that's the same as just giving them a pencil, right? And I just think there are so many learners which, we probably don't have time now to talk about accessibility and all of those things, but there are so many learners that struggle if you give them one way to input something, and maybe the rise of technology was because so many students struggle to write things down on paper. those same students might struggle to type on a keyboard, or you might have unearthed a whole other group of students that struggle to type on a keyboard. So just by allowing them to input things in more than one way just means that they can be successful. It's not to say get rid of handwriting. You know, Abdul in the previous session talked about that, taking photos of your written work, but uploading it digitally so it can still be viewed and marked and assessed in those ways. But you give choice so that students can work to the best of their ability and show their learning, not just show that they can write or show that they can type.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely spot on there. And we probably don't have time to delve into accessibility, but we have got a session tomorrow on accessibility, and we've got some resources that we can you can go off and explore there. I'm a huge fan of accessibility, and I know the way in which educators are creating resources to be accessible for all learners is rapidly changing. And I know you've created a number of resources as well over the years. How do you create them, and sort of what's your platform for sharing? Where would people find your resources that you've made to help people?
So I've gone through a couple of phases. I started creating some books because iPad gave me the power to make EPUBs directly on my device. It was just easy because I could integrate multimedia, video, sound, all the things that we just mentioned then. So I've made like a series of books all around different things that you can do in a classroom with technology, from, doing magic with clips to green screen to making books yourselves. And then more recently, I've got a YouTube channel that I've just kind of populated with, here's an idea, here's how to use this app, this is what you can do with it in a classroom. Just really taking some of that inspiration that I've had from other teachers or from working in schools where we've unearthed a solution to something and where technology's done it. So the books that I've written are all kind of available on the Apple Bookstore. Just search for my name and there's a library full there. And then equally on YouTube, you can search for my name and I think there's about 250 videos on there of me rambling on about how to use an app in the classroom for creative purposes. But the idea really, certainly for the videos, was I know that people just sometimes want a quick snapshot of what can you do with this. And it's not to say my ideas are the greatest ideas. By no means that. They're there to just hopefully inspire someone to go, I can see that I can do something like that, but this is how I'll apply it in my classroom with my learners. Again, Andrew Jewell spoke earlier today about this in terms of how do we inspire and engage learners? What do we do? And it is those memorable moments, right? And I will remember making those videos because they were fun to make. So, as a 42-year-old, if I'm still inspired by the creative side of things, then, let's hope that our young learners in the classroom still are as well.
No, I've seen your videos and your books and they're fantastic. They're great. Check them out. And that's, for me, going back to the ADE community, is something that we got set at Institute. Was like, it started with one best thing, and the power of community created content is just huge. It's seeing another educator apply their experience and knowledge and then share that with the world for free, and it's out there to go and download is super powerful. So any others that you've sort of read and used in your practice over the years? There's probably many, but is there any that have stood out?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many to share. I mean, there's another guy who, and again, goes back to this idea of having a YouTube channel, right? So out of my depth of having a YouTube channel. But another ADE, Jacob Woolcock, who's based in the UK, he had a YouTube channel. He just started out, and I just asked him for some advice. How do you do your opening credits? How do you do this? How do you put your videos together? And again, warm and happy to kind of help. It's not instantly seen as competition, like he had a YouTube channel, so therefore, or someone's trying to, step up. It was complete. He gave up so much time to just help me just do the basics. And then, again, books like Twitter. If you follow hashtag Apple Edu Chat, there are so many educators that are just so willing to share. And you said it yourself, we were kind of challenged to create this content, weren't we? And I think to everybody, teachers specifically are quite private about the things that they do in their classroom, or nervous to share it with anybody else in case it gets critiqued. Maybe that's a byproduct of a system that judges teachers all the time. And I think what I found in the Apple community was there will always be people there that will embrace what you've done, and share their things as well. And so, you know, I can't even name like the thousands of books that I've probably downloaded from people that I might not have necessarily read myself, but I know that there's a teacher who teaches music, and I know there's an AD who made a fantastic book about how to play the ukulele. By the way, there is. It's by Erica Moser and Owen Hughes, and they've made this whole book about how to play the ukulele. And I remember being on a training course, and there was a ukulele in the classroom, and it came up, and I shared the book with that teacher. And they've now integrated it into their curriculum, that they're using this book to help teach the students how to play the ukulele. It's fantastic, and it's because there's this ethos of sharing and putting things out there for other people to learn from in a non-judgmental way. You know, it's support. People might give you feedback, but it's kind of this good place where you want to develop and want to learn new things.
Yeah, I think you calling out there Owen's book on on GarageBand, fantastic to go and see what he's done with GarageBand and the ability that he has to replicate songs, and so much you can do with the musical side of things. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of that. I think we're sort of coming to sort of the end of the session. What would be your top tip for anyone who's thinking like, I want to be an Apple Distinguished Educator, I want to be part of this community? Where would they start? Anything that they can engage in now? Like you mentioned, like the Twitter chats. I know you run some of those, or you've taken part in some of those. Where do they need to start to sort of engage and start their sort of process in order to work towards becoming an Apple Distinguished Educator?
I'd say it's going to be a different journey for everybody, but the basics would be go to Apple Teacher, go through that process, understand the depth of the products that are there and how you can apply it. Start by socializing what you do in your classroom. And it's not to say, you know, taking photos of students, all that. You know, you can just simply share some of the ideas that you have. That Apple Edu chat is great to be involved in because it's going to make those connections for you. The one thing I would say is don't do it for the badge. Do it for the process, because even if you're not successful, the outcome will be that you've invested time in yourself and a journey, and you can always apply the next time, right? But definitely don't do it for the badge. Do it for what you'll get out of it, because going through Apple Teacher is professional learning for yourself. Joining in Apple Edu chat is about building that community. You'll have that community either way, and you will learn so much. So, and also that idea of share what you do, share the impact it has, because although you might think it's small because you're in a small community on your own, you're one person in your classroom, all of those things, there is somebody else who's in that same boat who needs to hear that it's okay. You know, just because social media has amplified everything for us, you know, 10 years on from when we started doing this, there are still people that still probably feel very alone in their journey and just need to know there's somebody else out there who equally is going through that journey. You know, what do I do here? And I've heard about this, or my IT team is saying I can't do this. You know, you need to find answers, and that's the best place for it. And if you do those things, that becomes your application. You know, that's the process. Don't apply without having gone through that process, because that's really challenging, right? But if you go through the process, you have an application ready to go because you've done it. You know, you've gone on the journey. So that would be my advice.
Great, that's awesome. Thank you very much. When is the next Apple EDU chat?
Well, the next Apple EDU chat is in 2 hours and 16 minutes tonight. So it's 8 o'clock UK time, and it's on Apple Teacher, in particular Apple Teacher Portfolio. So the whole reflective process on you as an educator and what you do in your classroom. So yeah, if you've not joined one before, hashtag Apple EDU chat, and you can come along and just lurk in the background and get ideas, or feel free to join in and share some thoughts or ask some questions of yourself. But it'd be great to see some new people along.
Yeah, that's
I'm hosting it, by the way, so that's why I'm drumming up.
And I think that's a great opportunity for those people to sort of start building up their network, see who's in those Twitter chats, reach out to them, follow them, find out what they're doing in their schools, and then take it from there. I think that's a great starting point. Thank you very much, Matt. That's been awesome. Love talking to you. Great that you've got your Jamf Educator badge. For those of you who are looking to become a Jamf Educator yourself, check out our additional resources. We had a session earlier with Em and Sarah. Or reach out to Matt. Follow him on Twitter. What's your Twitter handle, Matt? How do people
so I'm
get in touch
at
with you?
Matt6453. There's only one T in Matt, so because I'm different. So MAT6453.
Excellent. Thank you very much. That's been a great session. I've loved having you on to speak to you about ADEs, and people now know that an ADE means Apple Distinguished Educator. So thank you very much for your time. Have a great evening, everyone. Join us tomorrow for further sessions on day 2. And don't forget to go and join the EDU chat tonight, hosted by Matt on Apple Teacher. Thank you very much. Have a great evening. Take care.
Take care, everyone.